Chapter 41 Jiraiya's Appreciation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ha 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 ha. Umino Ikaku and Kanfata burst out laughing, and eventually, even Kyuubi joined in. The tent was filled with laughter and good spirits. Meanwhile, over at the main command tent, the day's meeting had wrapped up, leaving only Jiraiya and Nara Shikaku inside. Shikaku sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose and looking at Jiraiya with a hint of exasperation. Jiraiya-sama, I think you might have been a little too quick to promote Umino Kakugi today. Yeah, I hear you, Shikaku, Jiraiya replied with a sheepish grin. But, honestly, I haven't seen potential like that in ages. I thought Kakashi Hatake was something special, but this kid might be even better. Hatake Sakumo was a respected figure to Jiraiya, and his prodigious son, Kakashi, had been on Jiraiya's radar from an early age. After Sakumo's death, Jiraiya had suggested that his student, Namikaze Minato, take Kakashi under his wing and mentor him. Thinking about it, Minato was currently observing Kakashi and would probably take him on as a student soon. Compared to Kakashi, who graduated at 6 and became a chunin at 8, Kakugi, while showing some talent at the academy, could only be considered a regular genius. Konoha had plenty of those, but Jiraiya hadn't expected the surprise attack from the Sand Ninja to reveal such a hidden gem, a 9-year-old genin taking down an elite Sand Jonin, Kuroki Hayabusa. Even though the mission report highlighted the lucky breaks and uncertainties, Kakugi's performance was still astounding. For a 9-year-old, he possessed an incredible amount of chakra, skilled chakra control, a knack for learning and applying ninjutsu, and impressive combat intelligence. He had all the makings of a truly gifted ninja, and even more than that. Jiraiya was impressed and touched by Kakugi's dedication to his comrades and his willingness to disobey orders to protect them. The night Kakugi had carried Ibiki back to camp, Jiraiya had watched him closely. In Kakugi, he saw a young Namikaze Minato. It was no wonder he was so excited about the kid's potential. Still, Shikaku and the others had a point. The 9-year-old was still inexperienced, and he had tons of room to grow. There was no need to rush things and draw unnecessary attention to him. It was better to let him develop naturally and steadily, and then focus on intensive training later, when he was older and had gained more experience. Umino Ikaku was a seasoned jonin, calm and capable, but Jiraiya knew that eventually, Kakugi would outgrow his father's guidance. When that time comes, we'll figure out the next step for Kakugi, Jiraiya thought to himself, and he submitted a report on Kakugi's performance, along with his recommendations. Back to the village, he and Ikaku weren't exactly close. They were just regular colleagues. There wasn't much room for favors there. Kakugi had earned Jiraiya's admiration purely through his extraordinary abilities. Jiraiya couldn't stand to see a promising talent, especially one dedicated to protecting the village, go to waste. That was all there was to it. Soon after, Jiraiya's report and recommendations landed on the desk of the third Hokage. As Asuma's rival from their academy days, the third Hokage had heard of Umino Kakugi. He remembered how quickly Kakugi picked up the techniques and ninjutsu that Asuma had learned from him. The third Hokage had been impressed by the kid's natural talent for fighting. I didn't expect him to give me such a pleasant surprise after all these years, he thought, but the boy was still just a sprout. He needed more time, patience, and careful nurturing before he could grow into a mighty tree. The third Hokage agreed with Jiraiya's plan, but he quietly added Kakugi to his watch list. Word of Kakugi's accomplishments soon reached some interested parties. Many in Konoha decided to keep an eye on him, watching from the sidelines. Meanwhile, certain rival villages quietly added Kakugi to their hit list. Eliminating the enemy's prodigies was always a satisfying prospect. The next day, Ibiki woke up, and Kakugi went to visit him. Knowing what Ibiki had been through, the camp arranged for him to return to the village with the next group. Seeing Ibiki's reluctance, Kakugi encouraged him to focus on getting stronger. I won't hold you back next time, Ibiki said, forcing a smile. On the third day, it was time for Kakugi's team to get back to work. Umino Ikaku went to the command post to receive their orders, and Kakugi packed up, ready to go. Umino's squad was assigned to patrol a specific area on the front lines. A long-term B-rank mission. The Konohasuna border stretched for miles, with 13 outposts monitoring the area. Umino's squad sector was Area 8, covering the space between outposts 9 and 10, plus about 20 miles inward. Towards the main camp, all told, it was a territory of at least a dozen square miles. Fortunately, ninjas had superhuman stamina and speed. Even a genin was like a super soldier by modern standards, otherwise, Umino's team would need an armored vehicle to patrol that much ground. Along with Umino's squad, 50 other teams, totaling over 200 ninjas, were tasked with patrols. The teams were divided into day and night shifts, operating from the main camp outwards. Priority areas included the front lines facing Suna and the supply routes in the rear. Umino's squad was on the daytime shift. From then on, Kazuki's days consisted of patrolling from sunrise to sunset. During this time, Konoha and Suna were locked in a stalemate, with Konoha on the defensive and Suna launching minor attacks and infiltrations. Umino's team encountered a sand ninja squad, a standard team of 1 chunin and 3 genin. Umino Iruka didn't even need to lift a finger, Kazuki or Kyuubi could have wiped them out. However, Umino signaled a warning flare and engaged the enemy to test their strength. Soon, mobile reinforcements swooped in to eliminate the sand squad before gracefully departing. Umino wasn't being cowardly. Caution was necessary. The patrol unit's job was to safeguard the area and sound the alarm if they spotted enemies. Chapter 42 Patrol. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If the patrol gets trigger-happy and attacks without warning, they're just asking for the enemy to retaliate and wipe them out. That not only messes up the command post's intel but also lets the enemy slip away. Think about it. What if they ran into a sand ninja team with a monster like Gaara? Or what if Yura was hiding in the grass behind the sand ninjas, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? The patrol's best bet is to send a warning ASAP. The downside is, patrolling can be incredibly dull. No wonder Bare Hand thought a guard post would be better. Umino's squad used to be stationed at the Kawan no Kuni border, which was already considered the rear compared to the front lines. The frontline outposts serve as warning systems like the patrols, but they also provide backup when needed. Plus, most enemy probing attacks hit the frontline garrisons, more action and less endless running around compared to patrols. Another year went by. Kadaki and his teammates got a year older too. Umino went back to the village a few times for rotation and rest, just living a regular ninja life. Iruka was growing up and didn't hang around Kakugi every day like when he was little. His mom, Umino Koizumi, was starting to get wrinkles, and Kakugi realized she was already 40. After each break, he'd head back to the Kawakuni battlefield and get back to patrolling. For 2 years, Cloud Hidden Village was nursing its wounds, and Kirigakure Village stayed quiet. Konoha still had ninja stationed in the land of rivers and the land of grass, facing off against Sunagakure and Iwagakure. They clashed now and then, but no full-scale war broke out. Kakuaki, now 10, had the following stats: Host, Umino Tsunoki, overall combat strength, B+, chakra amount, 4.2 calories, attributes, wind, water, fire, earth, thunder, yin, yang. Number of copies, 1. As he got older, and with Kakumu copying every day, Kakumu's chakra far exceeded that of a regular jonin, and he'd finally gathered all 7 attributes. Plus, he'd copied the basic sensory ability of a sand ninja in a fight. It wasn't a long-range sense, just a vague sense of chakra direction. You had to be close to pinpoint someone's chakra, but it seriously boosted Kakugi's awareness, making it tough for enemies to ambush him. Now, Kakugi was an elite special jonin, on the verge of becoming a jonin. He'd mastered wind and water chakra manipulation and was working on fire. Earth was next. Kakugi's goal was to master all 5 elements like the 3rd Hokage. It was a way to compensate for not having a bloodline limit, but anyone watching Kadaki's chakra research would call him a monster. He owed it all to the system, which let him copy chakra to master related skills. Especially the advanced wind techniques copied from Kuroki Hayabusa, which instantly leveled up Kadoki's wind chakra mastery to elite jonin. How else could he progress so fast? Take Yushir Kyuubi, for example. He was 16 and had reached B-, a special jonin, but like 2 years ago, he was still focused on thunder chakra. One of the requirements for becoming a jonin is to develop and master a second attribute. Umino Iruka, a water specialist, also had thunder, but he usually stuck to water. Kyuubi, his student, had the same chakra attribute as Umino Iruka and was talented in thunder. But he wasn't making much progress with water. That was holding him back. Another team member, Kamada, was 14 and had grown to C+, a solid elite chunin. He was good with wind and dabbled in water, but Kanpo was a medic with a shy personality, and Kakugi didn't see him going far in combat. Campo's talent was in medical ninjutsu, Umino Ikaku, at 41, might be stuck at a level for good. If he wanted a breakthrough, he'd need some tech or a lucky mutation. Kazuoki was itching to fight someone with a bloodline limit and copy some abilities. Konoha didn't have many bloodline limits, just the 2-eye techniques. Hinata and Uchiha were off-limits. He'd fought Uchiha Obito at the academy, but Obito hadn't awakened his Sharingan yet, so Kakugi got nothing, and Kakumu wasn't interested in copying the Byakugan. Too obvious, too risky. Even if he copied the Sharingan, he could hide it. Bloodline ninjutsu were safer. After all, the first ones were developed by ninjas themselves. Kakumu looked up at the sky, mechanically moving his legs and spacing out, then a voice broke through. Umino-sensei, wanna take a break, asterisk. That cheesy tone could only be Kuma Tate. Kumote was giving Umino Ikaku puppy dog eyes, clearly hoping for a break. He'd been asking all day, but no luck. Now he was resorting to corny tricks. Gross. Umino Ikaku sighed and finally agreed. But stay quiet and alert. He warned. Kumatote had already plopped down next to Kazuoki. He hugged Kazuoki, batting his eyelashes while glancing at Umino Ikaku. Ugh, patrolling is so boring. I saw you zoning out earlier. What were you thinking about? Kakumu felt his neck getting squeezed. He tried to resist, but Bare Hand just squeezed harder and gave him a teasing look. Kakugi gave in. Just thinking about stuff, like ninjutsu development. Lame. Shyongsho scoffed and let go. Kakumu ignored him and took a drink in silence. Chapter 43 Encounter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After a beat, Kyuumate sidled up to Hanfang, winking. Kakumu was totally spacing out on patrol just now. What's he thinking about, you think? Huh? Hanfang, mid-bite of his hardtack, perked up, looking like he was ready for some gossip. Kyuumate waggled his pinky finger back and forth in front of Hanfang's face. You know. Well, Kakugi's getting to that age. Kyuumate wore a knowing, suggestive grin. Huh? Hanfang exclaimed, then lowered his voice to a gossipy whisper. When did that happen? And with who? Kakumu sighed, hearing Kyuumate's shameless trash talk. Is patrolling day in and day out driving Kyuumate crazy. Am I too nice to him? Kyuumate and Hanfang kept up their joking until Umino Ikaku finally blew his top. Quiet. Umino Ikaku spun around and yelled. Kyuumate shut up and quickly got back to his position, but the silence didn't last long. Kyuumate ran back to Hanfang, this time not daring to get too close, just muttering under his breath. Same spot, every day, nobody around, man. Wish some sand ninjas would show up already. Hanfang, having just gotten a warning, was reluctant to engage and just gave him a resistant look. Kakumu frowned. Kyuumate's always been a little out there, but this was just plain lazy. Umino Ikaku clearly heard Kyuumate's muttering. A vein throbbed in his forehead. That knucklehead needs to learn a lesson. With a burst of speed, he was right next to Kyuumate, who was so surprised he didn't even have time to react before Umino Ikaku knocked him flat. We're on a mission. We have to take it seriously, no matter what. What kind of ninja are you? Umino Ikaku roared, then his eyes narrowed. With a thwack, Kyuumate went flying, landing right in Hanfang's arms. At the same time, Umino Ikaku jumped back. Ha! Hanfang, caught off guard, barely managed to catch the human projectile. The impact sent him staggering backward as Umino Ikaku's shout rang in his ears. Spread out. Simultaneously, Kakugi was already forming hand seals. Fire style, fireball jutsu. A large fireball, 6 feet across, erupted from his mouth and hurtled directly towards where Kyuumate had been standing. Just as the fireball was about to hit, a black shadow, easily 7 feet tall, suddenly materialized in front of it. It appeared out of nowhere, as if it was waiting to be the target of Kakugi's jutsu. TSK. An unknown voice echoed from somewhere as the black shadow shot upward, narrowly avoiding the fireball. Boom! The fireball slammed into the open ground, kicking up a cloud of dust and smoke. Immediately after unleashing his ninjutsu, Kakugi drew his ninja sword and scanned the area. Umino Ikaku and Hanfang quickly drew their kunai, and Kyuumate also drew his ninja sword. All traces of his earlier sarcasm vanished, they formed a triangle, eyes fixed on the swirling dust and smoke. Soon, the smoke cleared, revealing a towering monster, easily 7 feet tall. The monster was completely black, with a single, constantly swiveling eye. Its mouth was stretched into a wide grin, and each of its 4 arms wielded a ninja sword with a faintly glowing blue blade, a sand ninja puppet. Clack, clack, clack. The distinctive sound of a puppet moving came from nearby. The sound was coming from behind. Kakumu instantly snapped around, swinging his sword. Clang! A harsh collision echoed as he met another puppet. The puppet held up a shield, blocking Kakumu's strike, while its other mechanical arm thrust a slender sword at Kakumu. Kakugi quickly sheathed his sword and leaped back, dodging the thrust. The puppet didn't pursue, holding its position. Looking closer, the shield that had just blocked Kakumu's strike was made of some unknown material. It only had a shallow scratch. In rapid succession, the 2 puppets had attacked, and while they hadn't landed a blow, they had effectively set up a flanking maneuver on Umino's team. And the puppet master hadn't even shown their face yet. This was bad. All 4 members of Umino's squad thought the same thing. Taking advantage of the brief lull, Hanfang quickly pulled out a signal flare and fired it. Hopefully, the reinforcements would get here as quickly as usual. TSK. You're a sharp one. So, what should we do about that? The voice was low and airy, making it impossible to pinpoint its source. This puppet master was a sound ninja, deliberately using chakra to distort the sound waves. Kakumu's heart sank. This guy was determined to play hide-and-seek, controlling his puppets from the shadows. But everyone knew that puppet masters relied on chakra strings to control their puppets, which meant the puppeteer couldn't be too far away. Just then, another burst of clack, clack, clack. Sounds echoed across the battlefield. More puppets. 2 puppets emerged behind Kyuubi and Hanfang, who, on edge, quickly noticed and backed away. One of the new puppets had 8 mechanical arms and a pair of wings, like a cockroach. The other was low to the ground, with long, sharp horns jutting from its head, like a unicorn. Another puppet, nearly human-sized, landed next to Umino Iruka, gripping a heavy sword in both hands, like a hulking iron golem. In front of Kakumu, a puppet appeared with bladed arms extended, like a praying mantis. The one-eyed puppet that had appeared first moved to stand beside the iron golem puppet in front of Umino Iruka. In an instant, Umino's team was surrounded by 6 puppets, and the puppet master was still nowhere to be seen. The battlefield froze for a moment, then, as if a switch had been flipped, all 6 puppets sprang into action. Clack, clack, clack. Lunging toward their respective opponents, Kyuubi and Hanfang each faced a single puppet, while Umino Iruka and Kakugi each had to deal with 2. Kakugi, gripping his ninja sword, utilized the white fang sword style, parrying attacks while trying to assess the situation. The mantis puppet was more active in direct attacks, while the shield puppet would occasionally block Kakugi's heavier blows and try to score cheap shots with its thin sword. The shield puppet must be a defense and assault type, while the mantis puppet is more combat-oriented. But the mantis puppet wasn't actually that good. Its attacks were often clumsy, and the hidden weapon mechanisms on its body weren't as sophisticated as the shield puppet. Despite its lack of raw power, the shield puppet had a dizzying array of hidden weapons. Whether it was using the shield to help the mantis puppet block attacks or using the weapons to launch sneak attacks, its timing was impeccable. These 2 puppets weren't being controlled by the same person. Kakugi suddenly understood. Then, let me see who's fighting us. Half Moon Slash. The powerful, arcing blade of light sliced through the air toward the 2 puppets, forcing them to retreat. Chapter 44. The battle begins. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kakumu seized the moment, whipping up a hand seal in under a second. Art of Fire Release, Fireball Jutsu. The massive fireball hurtled toward the 2 puppets, forcing them to retreat. The mantis puppet looked like it was starting to panic, on the verge of getting caught in the blast. The shield puppet stepped in front again, shielding the mantis puppet, using its body to take the brunt of the fireball's impact. Taking advantage of the distraction, Kazuki jammed his ninja sword into the ground and began another set of rapid hand seals. When the smoke cleared, the 2 puppets were untouched, except for some dents and charring on the shield puppet's defense. Unfazed, Kakugi unleashed his prepped ninjutsu. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Instantly, 3 shadow clones materialized at his side. 2 lunged at the puppets, while the third, gripping a knife, took up a defensive position, ready to sweep the area. Tsunoki had bigger fish to fry. Closing his eyes, hands locked in a Madra pose, images within a kilometer radius flooded his mind. The perceptual field showed a different reality. Mountains, rivers, and trees appeared as shadowy gray-white figures, while chakra glowed blue, focusing inward. Besides the chakra of Umino squad members and the lines connected to the puppets, there was also, at the top of a large tree, 4 chakras were clustered tightly together. Got them. Kakumu's eyes snapped open. He quickly formed seals and aimed at a large tree in the 3 o'clock direction. Fire release, Dragon Fire Jutsu. A stream of flames burst out, racing toward its target, the dragon head at the front looking particularly vicious. Boom! The fire dragon slammed into the tree, instantly snapping the trunk. The toppling tree ignited its neighbors, and a raging fire erupted. Before the dragon hit, the 4 figures had leaped to other trees, but soon flames licked at those 2. With no choice, the 4 dropped from the trees with irritated expressions, taking cover behind their puppets. While the puppet masters dodged the attacks, the puppets on the field fell into a brief stalemate. Kakumu's shadow clone sliced the mantis puppet in half, but was immediately impaled and exploded by the shield puppet. Umino Iruka shredded the one-eyed puppet with his water fong blade, and Kumitate's cockroach puppet had its wings clipped. Kamata, channeling wind release chakra through his kunai, turned the one-horned fairy into a hornless one. 2 puppets destroyed, 2 damaged, and the puppet masters flushed out. The momentum had swung. 2 of the 4 puppet masters stood behind the shield puppet, while the other 2 ran back to the battles on Bare Hand and Han Fong's sides. The puppet masters looked rattled, frantically reconnecting chakra lines to resume the fight. The one who'd been on Kakugi's side was especially grim. His mantis puppet was now scrap metal, courtesy of Kakugi's clone. Except for a select few powerhouses, a puppet master without a puppet is no different from a regular ninja who only knows taijutsu. Kakugi ran a system scan. Of the 2 puppet masters on his side, one was named Takaisha. His overall combat level was a jounin. The other's combat power was D+, the remaining 2 puppet masters were C+. The D+1 was the unlucky guy whose puppet was destroyed. Like the Umino squad, it was a standard team of 1 jounin and 3 chunin. The pros and cons of the puppet master profession were obvious. The puppet was strong and fearless, but the puppet master was vulnerable. Once a puppet master specializing in puppets lost his or her puppet or was outmaneuvered, they faced a huge disadvantage. Even someone as powerful as Sasori hid his true body in a puppet. Just like now, without cover from his companions, the puppet master team was exposed when Kakugi pinpointed their location. A specialized team like this should be working alongside a larger force. The fact that this team was alone seemed strange to Kazuoki. He looked at the puppet masters and grinned. It was him, plus 2 shadow clones, against the 2 puppet masters and their shield puppet. An excellent opportunity to strike. The apparent leader, Gao Jingsha, didn't panic. The kid in front of him was just a chunin. He probably just got lucky pinpointing them using sensory ninjutsu. Plus, he split off 3 shadow clones, so he had to be low on chakra, right? And now, he wanted to attack. Perfect. The shield puppet excelled in close combat. With the shield puppet, he would take out the 2 shadow clones easily. Later, under the combined assault of the puppet and his subordinate, they could take the kid down. Then, with his 2 puppets, they could backstab the jounin and flip the whole battle. Flawless. Although, the chunin brat looked strangely familiar, Kazuoki didn't know or care what Taoisa was plotting. Puppet masters were powerful in one-on-one fights, but this was 3 against 1. Kakugi ignored the D+ kid next to him who had lost his puppet. He sent 2 shadow clones to keep the shield puppet busy, drew his ninja sword, took a deep breath, and exhaled onto the blade. Super sharp wind release chakra clung tightly to the steel. This wasn't ordinary chakra enhancement, it was the apex of wind release transformation. In the original story, Kazekage used this move and even pierced Susan. Wind release, vacuum blade. Kakumu vanished in a puff of smoke, instant transmission technique. The D+ puppet master stopped in his tracks, fear creeping into his heart. How could he be so fast? Before he could process what happened, he felt light, floating. It wasn't until he saw his headless body crash to the ground that he understood, what a fast blade. Tao Jingsha's eyes went wide. He unleashed everything he had, a storm of hidden weapons and poison smoke, barely driving back the two shadow clones. He yanked the shield puppet back. Scree, that a flash of light, and Tao Jingsha frantically ordered the puppet to raise the shield. This shield was custom-built. Not only was it made from the strongest iron wood in the land of wind, it could channel the puppet master's chakra to boost its defense, it could withstand B-rank ninjutsu, but couldn't stop a Konoha Chunin sword, right? Squeak. The sword and the shield met, but not in the explosion that Takayisha had expected. The ninja sword scratched slowly and deliberately across the surface. Chapter 45 Devastated. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In Tao Jingsha's horrified gaze, the shield he'd pinned his hopes on was sliced in half in under a second, taking the puppet's arm along with it. Kazuoki's vacuum blade might not pierce Susanna, but a puppet shield. That's just a little more work than cutting wood. You're no ordinary Chunin. Tao Jingsha yanked the puppet back and scrambled for reinforcements from the Repay puppet nearby. Forget the Jounin over there, he had to deal with the Grim Reaper in front of him. You're Umino Kazuoki. Kazuoki nodded, a smile playing on his lips. He figured he'd be on Sand Ninja's hit list by now. He raised a sword finger and used the body flicker technique. Tao Jingsha swung the puppet's rapier, stabbing forward while unleashing a barrage of hidden weapons from its mouth. Shoo! Kazuoki parried and countered. 2 moves later, Tao Jingsha was retreating again, puppet in tow. The blade had severed the puppet's other arm and the jaw that spewed the hidden weapons. Now, armless and toothless, the puppet was a mess, just like Tao Jingsha's mood. Finally, the Repay puppet arrived, and Tao Jingsha quickly ordered it to defend him. Bad news, Umino Iruka, wielding his twin Suiga blades, was right behind him. Nearby, Kyuubi and Hanfang were gaining ground against the other 2 puppet masters. Victory was just a matter of time. Seeing his dad arrive, Kazuoki sent 2 shadow clones to assist Kyuubi and expedite the process. Tao Jingsha looked bleak. He should have listened to his gut and not underestimated the enemy. He thought he'd find some small fry on patrol, but he'd blundered into a buzzsaw. So, what brings a team of puppet masters like you out here, huh? Umino Iruka asked, suspicion in his voice. Something felt wrong. Normally, the signal flare would have brought reinforcements by now. Ha! Tao Jingsha sneered. We were just looking to stir up some trouble. Guess we hooked a big one. Tao Jingsha licked his lips, staring coldly at Umino and his son. Humph. Looks like you bit off more than you can chew. Kazuoki scoffed. Ha. Tao Jingsha didn't reply, just laughed. Umino Iruka's gut feeling intensified. I'm not in the mood for games. Let's be straight. You got backup? Backup? Nah, just here for a good time. Tao Jingsha replied casually, glancing at his 2 subordinates. The cockroach puppet was in pieces, and the 2 sand ninjas were barely holding on with the rhino puppet. Ah! Ah! 2 screams pierced the air. Kenfang impaled one sand ninja through the chest, killing him. The other made a fatal mistake and was slashed across the neck by Kyuubi. Kazuoki's shadow clones, their job done, vanished. Ugh! Tao Jingsha sighed heavily, regret etched on his face. Those were your students? Umino Iruka asked suddenly. Yeah, all 3, Tao Jingsha said sharply, a flicker of guilt in his eyes. It's a pity to be born in times like these. Yeah, Umino Iruka agreed. So, you're not surrendering, right? Taking a deep breath, Tao Jingsha straightened his back, his hands rising slightly. His eyes weren't filled with hate, but with determination. Come on, let's do this, Konoha ninja. Tao Jingsha snapped his hands down, and the 2 puppets charged like arrows. Every mechanism on the shield puppet opened, spewing poisonous smoke everywhere. They hastily held their breaths and retreated. Kazuoki quickly formed a seal, readying wind-style, breakthrough to disperse the smoke. But a figure emerged from the toxic cloud, the heavy sword puppet. teeth and claws bared, spat out a volley of poison needles, then swung its heavy sword in a wide arc at Kazuoki. Song. Umino dodged the needles, blocked the repay with his water fang blade, and looked anxiously at Kazuoki. Kazuoki understood. He completed the seal in less than a second, aiming his mouth at the heavy sword puppet and the poisonous mist behind it. Wind style, great breakthrough. Umino Iruka teleported out of the way. The powerful gust of wind instantly slammed into the heavy sword puppet. The puppet braced itself, the storm winds carving deep furrows under its feet. The puppet seemed so small in the face of the storm. Gusts of wind tore around the heavy sword puppet, rapidly clearing the poisonous mist. The shield puppet, having unleashed its arsenal, stood alone before Tao Jingsha. The heavy sword puppet, though battered, stood firm, as if holding up the honor of a puppet master. Call out, that the heavy sword puppet lunged forward, all its mechanisms firing a stream of poison needles at Kazuoki, then abruptly spun around and charged towards Umino Iruka. Dodging, Kazuoki deflected the needles with his ninja sword. Umino Iruka met the heavy sword puppet head-on, blades clashing. Each impact made the repay puppet groan. It was clear the puppet was at its limit, weakened by the long battle and Kazuoki's C-rank ninjutsu. With the chakra boost, Kazuoki's C-rank jutsu packed the punch of a B-rank technique. After deploying the delaying tactic, Kazuoki teleported straight to Tao Jingsha. Tao Jingsha directed the shield puppet to meet him head-on. Kazuoki leaped into the air, his sword a flash of light. The crippled shield puppet, having used all its tricks, was defenseless. It greeted its end like a martyr, welcoming death. The ending was inevitable. The shield puppet, stripped of its shield, was no match for the vacuum blade. It fell to the ground, cut cleanly in two. Elsewhere, the heavy sword puppet, pushed beyond its breaking point, was ripped apart by Umino Iruka. Seeing Kazuoki and Umino Iruka approach, with Kyuubi and Hanfang closing in, Tao Jingsha smiled bitterly. Total defeat. Chapter 46 Self-Destruction Again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Well, Konoha ninjas, looks like this is where I make my stand. I hope my students and I gave you a fight you won't forget. Takayisha gave a wry smile, slowly untying his jonin vest and showing both sides to Kakugi and the others. The inside of the vest was lined with exploding tags, and they were making a faint crackling sound. Head north. Everyone went nuts, using the body flicker technique to get the hell out of there. Haha, goodbye, Konoha ninja. A look of regret, longing, and guilt for his students filled Tao Jingsha's eyes, until... Boom! A deafening explosion ripped through the air as countless exploding tags detonated. The resulting shockwave spread like wildfire, kicking up a massive cloud of dust and swallowing everything in its path. Cough! It wasn't until the thick smoke started to clear that everyone cautiously approached the site. All that remained was a huge crater, 6 feet deep, and scattered bits and pieces of debris that could never be pieced back together. What's with these sand ninjas? Do they all have a death wish? If you love explosions so much, go join the demolition squad in Stone Village. Kakugi cursed in a rage, then casually selected the option to copy the enemy's skills. Puppet mastery wasn't really part of Kakugi's long-term goals. He just hoped to run into some different opponents later in the day. Worst case scenario, they'd head back to camp after the patrol and spar with Kushu. Kushu's mastery of lightning release was way better than his own, and Kakugi had been itching to get better at it. Kyuubi and Kenfang chimed in, also letting off steam about the sand village. Thing is, Konoha knew next to nothing about puppetry. Snagging the head of a jonin puppet master would have been a major score. Actually, I kinda get where this sand ninja was coming from. Umino Iruka had been standing silently by the crater for a long moment before finally speaking up. As a jonin, he knew too much about the village's secrets. Losing ninjutsu or sensitive information would be a serious blow. If Umino Iruka ever found himself in a situation where escape wasn't an option, he'd probably make the same choice. Better to take the village's secrets to the grave and preserve the honor of a jonin, especially this puppet master. He probably already had a death wish after watching his students get taken out one by one. To be honest, this puppet master team was pretty strong. They could have really messed up an ordinary patrol squad. Too bad they didn't get that lucky. This team didn't have to end like this, but their captain screwed it up with a bad decision. Thinking about it, Umino Ikuku used his summoning jutsu and called forth a ninja hawk. These were standard equipment for Konoha Jonin and Anbu, used to send messages in emergencies. There was no way this puppet master team infiltrated alone. There had to be backup troops somewhere. It had been a while since they sent out the signal flares, but no reinforcements or response had come. That was seriously off. As far as Umino could tell, no other teams in the nearby patrol areas had sent up any signal flares either. A terrifying thought nagged at Umino. Unless the entire mobile force had been wiped out, the only reason reinforcements wouldn't be there on time was if the entire front line was under attack by the Sand Ninja at the same time. Umino Ikuku wrote down everything, from their encounter with the enemy to his suspicions, in ciphered text and tied it to the Ninja Hawk's leg. Watching the Ninja Hawk take flight toward the Konoha camp, Umino Ikuku let out a heavy sigh. He hoped his hunch was wrong. Waving the team together, Umino Ikuku explained his analysis of the situation to Kazuki, Kyuubi, and Kenfang. So, that's the picture. Our signal flares didn't get a response. I've sent the information back to camp. Until we hear back, we need to keep doing what we're doing. If nobody objects, we'll take a quick break and get back to patrolling. Umino Ikuku paused, looked at everyone, and was just about to give the order. Actually, I have a slightly different idea. Umino Ikuku expected Kyuubi to be the one complaining, but it turned out to be Kakugi. Umino Ikuku smiled and nodded, encouraging Kakugi to speak. Sho never got that kind of treatment. Kakugi collected his thoughts. We can't reach the mobile unit, and we haven't heard back from camp yet. Continuing to patrol doesn't make a lot of sense. If we run into more Sand Ninja while patrolling, we'll still be fighting alone, without any way to call for backup. Besides, if there really are a lot of Sand Ninja troops behind this puppet master team, we could be in serious trouble. It's even possible that the Sand Ninja have launched a full-scale attack. Kakugi looked around. Umino frowned, deep in thought. Kenfang looked worried, and Quomote was dead serious. Swallowing hard, Kakugi spoke with determination. I suggest we ditch the mission and head straight back to reinforce the camp. Silence hung in the air for a moment. Both Kyuubi and Kenfang were shocked. Kuma T's jaw dropped. He never expected Kakugi to be so bold. A vein popped out on Umino's forehead, then gradually subsided. After thinking for a bit, he finally spoke. A ninja's first duty is to their mission. Unless there's an emergency or we get new orders, we have to keep doing what we're supposed to do. Don't talk about abandoning the mission so lightly in the future. Umino glared at Kakugi, his face like thunder. Kakugi nodded quickly. It was the first time he'd seen his dad so calm and confident. So he must be my real father. Shion Sho thought silently. He'd wanted to say something similar, but Kakugi beat him to it. But if he had spoken up, he wouldn't just get shot down, he'd get a beating, right? Rest for 15 minutes, then we're back on patrol. Umino relaxed his expression and forced a smile, but his tone was still cold. Everyone rested in silence, taking soldier pills and trying to recover their chakra. Kakugi wasn't thrilled with his father's decision, but he kept his mouth shut. He just quietly restored his chakra and got ready for the next fight. Umino Ikuku saw everyone's reactions and gave a small smile. Kakugi's suggestion wasn't entirely wrong. Umino Ikuku knew the danger of continuing the mission, and he already had a plan to deal with it. He'd set aside the time to hear everyone's opinions. Chapter 47: The Third Generation of Kazekage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It would be foolish to abandon the mission before things calm down. For ninjas, giving up on a mission is a cardinal sin, while persistence is next to godliness. Saying otherwise would invite trouble. That's what fueled Umino Ikuku's anger. The 15-minute break flew by. Everyone gathered their gear, waiting for Umino Ikuku's signal to move out. Umino Ikuku cleared his throat, a faint smile playing on his lips. Umino squad, target area D, let's roll. With that, he headed toward area D. Shion Sho blurted out, but we're in area A now. Execute the order. Umino Ikuku snapped. continuing toward Area D without looking back. Xiongshou and Hanfang exchanged bewildered glances. Frozen in place, Kakugi snapped into action, shot them a look, and barked. "What are you waiting for? Let's go." He hurried after Umino Ikuku, Kyuubi and Kenfang, still confused, followed Kakugi's lead. As Kakugi trailed behind Umino Ikuku, a smile crept across his face as he gazed at his father's broad back, his eyes sparkling with admiration. "You sly dog, Dad." Area 8, the zone patrolled by the Umino squad, was divided into 4 sectors, A, B, C, and D. Areas A and D were on opposite sides of their starting point, while B and C were south, closer to the outpost. While there wasn't a rigid patrol route, Umino squad typically started in Area A, moved to Area B, then over to C, and finally to D before heading back to camp. Currently, Umino squad was at the junction of Areas A and B. Logically, they should have been heading to Area B. Next, Umino Ikuku's order to patrol Area D, while still fulfilling patrol duties, subtly brought them closer to the camp. If the loss of contact with the mobile unit was just a simple mishap, re-establishing contact with headquarters would likely result in a continuation of the mission, albeit with a delay. However, if the speculation about a full-scale attack by the Sand Ninja, with reinforcements on the way, proved true, Umino squad would be in a better position to beat a hasty retreat. Kakugi mentally applauded his father's cleverness. Umino Ikuku was demonstrating how a seasoned ninja performs a mission with flexibility. Take notes, kid. This is a learning opportunity. Deep within the dense forest, a small clearing provided a respite. Yitsong sat astride a tree stump, fanning her flushed face with her right hand. Streaks of blood and sweat clung to the orange tips of her hair. In front of her, the clearing and surrounding trees teemed with Sand Village ninjas, comprising over a dozen squads. Each squad was an elite unit, led by a jonin. These squads had simultaneously fanned out to attack the patrol zone. Their combined strength and stealth had swiftly eliminated Konoha's patrol teams. Yitsong had personally led the charge to eliminate Konoha's mobile forces deployed in the area. For this assault, the Sand Ninja had sacrificed numerous spies to gather precise patrol and defense intel. This was the result of that near-perfect raid. Unfortunately, mistakes still happened. Yitsong glanced up, gauging the time, and impatiently asked a nearby Sand Ninja. "Jinsuk, has Takisana's team arrived yet?" Jinsuk, flinching at her impatient tone, responded, "No, not yet." "How long has it been?" "We've been waiting, almost half an hour." "That weakling." Yitsong leaped to her feet and punched the tree trunk, leaving a deep indentation. "I shouldn't have allowed that arrogant Tao Jingsha to join the raid team. Now he's nowhere to be found." The surrounding Sand Ninjas fell silent. After a moment, Yitsong composed herself and asked calmly. "Where is Lord Kazekage?" Jinsuk said cautiously, "I sent him a message 20 minutes ago." "TSK." Yitsong's face flushed, an ugly scowl twisting her features. After a long pause, she spoke grimly. "The worst-case scenario is that the puppet master Tao Jingsha and his students have perished in Area 8, meaning we haven't completed the mission. There's still a Konoha patrol team wandering around in that area." "That's impossible, Yitsong," Jinsuk said, trying to reassure her. "Takaisha is a jonin, after all. Maybe he's just enjoying himself a little too much. I have to prepare for the worst," Yitsong said, gritting her teeth. "The area hasn't been cleared, and our army of 8,000 is exposed. The longer we wait, the greater the chance that patrol team will stumble onto something, blowing our cover. We have to act fast. Inform the Kazekage that we'll launch a rear attack on all Konoha outposts simultaneously in 30 minutes. Request that he launch a coordinated attack from the front to create a pincer movement. And..." Yitsong hesitated, then said, "Tell Lord Kazekage about Area 8 so he can be prepared." "Move out." "Yes." Everyone answered in unison. The preparation she was referring to was for the possibility of failure. The potential presence of the patrol team in Area 8 was like a thorn in Yitsong's side. If Gao Jingsha's team had been wiped out, this other team must have learned something. It was even possible that they'd alerted Konoha, negating the element of surprise. Such mistakes could prove fatal, but Yitsong had no time to correct her mistake. With their arrow knocked and ready to fire, any further delay could expose their hand. The only choice was to launch the attack immediately. Soon, the third Kazekage received the message from Yi Tsang. After reading it, he handed it to Luo Sha. The land of rivers split the land of fire and the land of wind into the north and the south. Interestingly, the land of rivers and the land of fire are covered with dense jungles, while the land of wind is a land of yellow sand and deserts, taking the border of Kawa no Kuni as the dividing line. The border of the wind country, which is adjacent to Kawa no Kuni, looks like a desert with sparse trees. Further south, there is rolling yellow sand. At this time, the Sand Ninja army was at the wind country border, facing the dense forests of the land of rivers and the Konoha camp. Unlike the dramatic imagery of 8,000 troops charging into battle, the Gobi Desert was eerily quiet. Even the nearby Konoha outpost was oblivious. 8,000 sand village ninjas were hidden under the yellow sand. To achieve this, the third Kazekage used the secret technique of lurking in the sand to pull 8,000 ninjas into the yellow sand from several miles away. The massive magnetic chakra enveloped each ninja like a coil, holding up the heavy sand and blocking outside detection. This secret technique used electromagnetic force to create disturbances in the magnetic field that would disrupt chakra sensors, so that no one could find them. Following that, the third Kazekage single-handedly maneuvered the entire army to the border. Throughout the entire process, all the ninjas remained silent, holding their breath, awestruck by their Kazekage. With such power, how can our sand village not prosper? However, even the third Kazekage was exhausted. Upon receiving Yi Tsang's message, the third Kazekage was initially angered by her imprudent decision, then by Tao Jingsha's incompetence, ultimately succumbing to a sigh of resignation. As Kazekage, he had done everything in his power. Now, the only option was to proceed with the attack. The Sand Ninja had invested considerable time and effort, and they couldn't afford to abandon their plan. Due to a possible oversight, the best course of action was to strike before Konoha could react. The potential presence of the patrol team was now irrelevant. The third Kazekage smiled proudly at Luo Sha, who was carefully reading the information. He was pleased to have a disciple who had inherited the magnetic release mantle. After this battle, he would impart the secrets of iron sand and hidden sand to him. He would entrust the future of Sand Village to him. Chapter 48 Decision. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Umino squad continued their patrol in Area D of Sector 8. A gentle breeze rustled through the dense woods, where birds chirped, blocking the harsh sunlight. The shade provided Umino a sense of peace, but as time wore on, Umino's expression darkened. They were still out of contact with the mobile unit, and hadn't received any response from HQ. It was possible the mobile units were wiped out in a surprise attack, but the same couldn't be said about HQ. Unbeknownst to Umino, his message had sparked a huge debate back at command. Umino's theory was just too extreme. This is a bit much. Yuhi Kurenai muttered, scratching his head as he reviewed the intel. He and Umino were old friends, but this was pushing it. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Jiraiya cleared his throat, cutting through the noise. I had the same reaction. That's why I brought you all here, to seriously consider this. He scanned the room, taking in the 40-plus Jonin and special Jonin present. If Umino's right, then the Sand Ninja silently eliminated over a dozen patrol and mobile units, preventing them from sending any kind of warning. Patrols are mostly Chunin and Genin, but still, you'd need an elite team led by a Jonin to take them out that quietly. Our mobile force. 14 ninjas, including several Jonin and special Jonin. A real elite team. To neutralize them that smoothly, without a sound, you'd need an ambush, a raid, and probably a Kage-level ninja. Jiraiya explained his reasoning, based on Umino's report. I immediately contacted the patrols and mobile units, excluding Umino's squad. Still no response. If this is true, you all understand what it means. Jiraiya crossed his arms, his words hanging heavy in the air. Silence filled the command post. Finally, Kurenai spoke. With all due respect, Jiraiya-sama. If the Sand Ninja are bypassing our forward scouts, infiltrating with that many elite ninjas, they're planning a full-scale assault, a decisive battle. That means they'd need backup, thousands of ninja prepared. And those troops would be nearing our front lines, using the infiltration to their advantage. Even if our defenses have been compromised, there's no way that many troops could go unnoticed. Jiraiya nodded, acknowledging Kurenai's concern. We checked with the forward scouts. They haven't detected any sign of a sand ninja army. Confusion spread through the command post. The scouts were equipped with sensor ninjas and Byakugan. The Hyuga representatives chimed in, asserting that their Byakugan could see everything. The Hyuga comments only fueled the debate, raising the tension. Jiraiya pondered, weighing the options. A commander had to make quick decisions, but everyone had valid points. Mobilizing the entire army was no small matter. He hesitated. The argument continued until a voice cut through the chaos. Jiraiya-sama, I suggest we prepare for war immediately. That it was Shikaku Nara, the staff officer. The Nara clan's intellect was legendary, especially Shikaku's. Everyone quieted down. Shikaku stood, facing the group. It's true, Umino's report is largely speculation. But I believe we can all see the logic behind his conclusions. The problem is, some of that intel is unconfirmed. And we haven't found any sign of sand ninja at the front. Even so, I stand by my recommendation. We prepare for war. Because, Shikaku paused, looking at the puzzled, doubtful, and dismissive faces. He raised his chin. I can't afford to gamble. If the sand has a way to hide from us, to launch a surprise attack, the consequences would be devastating. If we lose this bet, we'll be caught unprepared, facing a brutal assault. We risk total annihilation. That is all. Shikaku took a breath, turning to Jiraiya, his eyes intense. Jiraiya-sama, please make a decision. The command post was silent. Everyone watched Jiraiya. All right. Jiraiya rose, placing his hands on the table. Still deep in thought, he slammed a fist on the table, his voice firm. How the sand managed to sneak an army to the front, we'll worry about that later. Assume they're about to hit the front lines. All units to combat readiness level 1. Mobilize the entire army. Yes, sir. As orders were issued, the Konoha camp sprang into action. Each ninja a cog, each team a gear, operating under Jiraiya's command. The total force stationed here was less than 2,000 ninjas, excluding the garrisons at the 13 outposts and any patrols that had been lost. A defensive battle, using the terrain, was the smart move. Jiraiya's orders had been dispatched to Umino squad via the forward outpost. He trusted the message would arrive soon. He knew Umino was a reliable veteran, someone who would stick to his post, even if he thought a full-scale attack was imminent. The lack of activity at the front meant the sand hadn't launched their assault, giving Umino's team a chance to retreat. Jiraiya kept his message brief, return immediately. He also ordered the 13 outposts to pull back, warning them about the infiltrating sand teams. But he knew their chances weren't great. Logically, those same infiltrated teams would hit the outposts alongside the main assault, eliminating any remaining threats. The outpost defenses were made up of mostly genin and chunin, with few jonin. An encounter with an elite sand team wouldn't end well. If Jiraiya launched an offensive, he could give the withdrawing forces a better chance. But the numbers were against him. He couldn't justify the risk. This is war. Sacrifices are necessary. Jiraiya muttered, clenching his fists. Since his 20s, he fought alongside Tsunade and Orochimaru, defeating Hanzo. Now, at 40, he was a commander, locked in a stalemate with the sand. The war seemed endless. Jiraiya felt exhausted. He longed for peace, for the days when he could travel outside the village without worry. Having done all he could, Jiraiya clasped his hands behind his back, gazing south, towards the land of wind. He found himself thinking of his 3 students in the land of rain. Had Conan grown into a beauty? Was Yahiko more responsible? And Nagato, the child of prophecy with the Rinnegan, had he grown enough to bring about peace? Jiraiya smiled, a faint thought reaching across the miles, to the distant land of rain. Suddenly, a burst of fire erupted in the distance, shattering his reverie. It came from the direction of the forward outpost. Jiraiya's eyes widened, his fists clenched, his tall frame rigid. Before he could react, more fires erupted, forming a chain reaction. Jiraiya's eyes burned. The sand. They were here. Chapter 49 War of Words. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the Kawakuni border, at a Konoha outpost, the stone watchtowers had crumbled, and the bamboo and wooden ones were engulfed in flames. The blaze spread to the nearby trees, turning them into giant fireballs from afar. Reporting, Yakura-san. The Konoha ninja at these outposts seemed to be ordered to retreat, but they were in such a hurry. We caught most of them before they could even evacuate. The few who managed to leave early were also ambushed. Fong and his team are intercepting and eliminating any stragglers. Only the 2 Konoha teams at Outpost 9 slipped through our fingers. By the time we arrived, the place was deserted. We've now entered Area 8. Yi-san, who had been calmly listening to the reports, frowned. What happened? She snapped. Well. Jinsook looked embarrassed. He glanced at Yi-san, hesitating. Cao Jingsha was originally in charge of Outpost 9. Seeing his subordinate's reluctance, Yi-san immediately understood. Since Cao Jingsha was out of commission, Yi-san had planned to go to Outpost 9 herself. But she got caught up intervening at Outpost 4, blasting it with an explosive fireball. Then she did the same at Outpost 7. She'd been so busy that she'd forgotten her original objective. Yi-san's face turned red. She felt just as awkward as Jinsook. Finally, she muttered, "Damn Taoisa." Jinsook nodded eagerly. Yi-san. Luo Sha hurried over, his brow furrowed as he looked at the burning watchtowers. Yakura. You've gone too far. Luo Sha pointed at the blaze. This is practically a signal flare for the Konoha ninja. Yi-san glanced at Luo Sha and calmly replied, if we want to take out these outposts quickly, we have to use everything we've got. This isn't an assassination. Are we supposed to limit ourselves by not using explosive tags and fire-style ninjutsu? Luo Sha felt like he was choking. He couldn't find the words to argue, even though he knew something was wrong. Jinsook could only feel a bead of sweat rolling down his forehead. He silently cursed, Yakura-sama, you were the one who started with the fireballs, and now everyone's doing it. Seeing Luo Sha speechless, Yi-san secretly gloated, though she remained outwardly composed. Instead, she patiently explained, our intelligence might be compromised. The only way to compensate for that now is to act fast. Even if our methods are extreme and Konoha sees everything, it'll be worth it as long as we buy time. Yi-san answered Luo Sha's concerns in a persuasive and patient manner, like a kind, understanding mentor. Luo Sha felt his brain short-circuit for a moment. He wanted to argue but didn't know where to begin, so he just nodded. Yi-san, her mouth dry from talking, wiped her lips. Then she realized she hadn't reported to the Kazekage. She quickly changed the subject. Where's Lord Kazekage? That without the gaslighting haze surrounding him, Luo Sha suddenly perked up. When he spoke of the 3rd Kazekage, his voice was filled with both awe and deep admiration. Lord Kazekage used a secret technique to bring us here, and it left us exhausted. To better prepare for battle, he's resting nearby. He said he'll regain his strength and chakra as soon as possible and join the fight. He's alone. Yi-san felt a twinge of worry. The 3rd Kazekage was already in poor condition. She knew things could go wrong even in the safest situations. Relax. Luo Sha smiled, completely unconcerned for the Kazekage's safety. Not only is Lord Kazekage's resting place a secret that even I don't know, but he also has the Shadow Guard with him. And we also have our genius puppet master, Scorpion. Oh, then it's fine. Yi-san was instantly relieved. Scorpion was the most talented puppet master to come out of Sunagakure in years. He'd mastered the 10 puppet technique at a young age, something only Chiyo-sama could do. Given time, and if he could create an even better puppet or inherit Chiyo-sama's Chikamatsu's 10 puppets, he would definitely become a shadow-level powerhouse. With Scorpion by the Kazekage's side, there was no doubt about his safety. Oh, and before he left, Lord Kazekage ordered that all members of the infiltration unit join the ninja army, and that the ninja army will be under my command. Luo Sha smiled at Yi Tsang, as if revealing the information casually. Yi Tsang's eyes widened instantly, and her back arched slightly, like a cat with its fur standing on end. Oops, I almost forgot. Here's the warrant from Lord Kazekage. Luo Sha handed the warrant to Yi Tsang with a smile, seemingly oblivious to Yi Tsang's shocked reaction. His cat-teasing expression was a complete contrast to the way he'd been stammering and speechless just moments before. This is Luo Sha. While his calm personality was nothing like Yi Tsang's sharp tongue, he was smarter than he seemed. It was only because Yi Tsang wasn't inferior to him in status and strength that he usually kept things even. Luo Sha was fierce and cruel towards the enemy but relatively gentle towards his companions. But if he got the chance, he wouldn't hesitate to regain his position. Everyone wanted to climb the ladder, right? Humph. Yi Tsang relaxed her posture, glared at Luo Sha, snatched the warrant, quickly read it, and tossed it to Jinsuk. Jinsuk hadn't expected such an important document to end up in his hands. He fumbled to catch it and looked at Yi Tsang awkwardly, but Yi Tsang didn't even glance at him. She stared directly at Luo Sha. Jinsuk, take the warrant and contact the infiltration unit. Tell them to return to the ninja army, temporarily, and to be under Raza's unified command, temporarily. Yi Tsang stressed the word temporarily with venom, practically spitting the words out as she ordered Jinsuk. Jinsuk didn't react at first, but when he realized what Yi Tsang meant, he shivered. In Jinsuk's mind, the normally composed Yi Tsang was like a volcano barely held in check, ready to erupt and destroy everything in its path. Luo Sha acted as if he didn't hear the hidden meaning in Yi Tsang's words, nor did he notice the anger beneath her calm facade. He continued to speak with a gentle smile. Yi Tsang, you seem flustered. Maybe you didn't read it carefully. The warrant says, all members of the infiltration unit. Like Yi Tsang, Luo Sha emphasized all members and smiled. Jinsuk felt like the blood in his veins was turning to ice. Even with the burning watchtower nearby, a bone-chilling cold swept through him. Ha! Yi Tsang sneered, looked at Luo Sha with contempt, and retorted. Lord Kazekage said, all members. Of course, all members will only arrive when Lord Kazekage is present. Without waiting for Raza's ugly expression, she kicked Jinsuk hard. Jinsuk, didn't you hear Lord Kazekage's order? Why are you still standing here? Go now. Yes, yes. Jinsuk, eager to escape the tension, didn't notice anything strange in Yi Tsang's statement. He quickly relayed the order and ran off. Chapter 50 Pursuit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After dismissing Jinsuk, Yi Tsang turned to Luo Sha, a delicate smile on her face. That intel I gave the Kazekage about rats in District 8. Well, Army Command is such a hassle, I'll leave it to Raza's Jonin. Guess I'm stuck catching mice. Yi Tsang swayed her hips, looking forlorn, her red lips slightly parted. It was a pitiful act. Honestly, leaving a weak woman like me to catch mice. Luo Sha's Jonin are so mean, heh. Luo Sha's face darkened, and his chakra seemed to be solidifying around him. Yi Tsang chuckled and darted toward Area 8, Luo Sha stood there, teeth clenched, face like thunder, not uttering a word. Finally, he spat out, Yi Tsang, that the lush green grass and dense jungle, a rare sight in the land of wind, brought a smile to Yi Tsang's face. Oblivious to Luo Sha's fury, she strolled through Area 8. Even if she did see him, she'd just call him a stuffy loser. These days in Sunagakure, only the two head advisors and the third Kazekage held any sway over her. Luo Sha, younger by a few years, was skilled, sure, but that was it. Yi Tsang had no ambition for village leadership. She hadn't cultivated any political following. But she, Yi Tsang, possessed the fierce pride of a desert woman. Luo Sha might be the third Kazekage's disciple, and maybe he was the temporary commander until the third got back, but it was still too soon for him to be giving Yi Tsang orders. During a full-scale attack, the number of rats in Area 8 was hardly a priority. This was just her excuse to skip out. She'd find those mice and have some fun with them. When she got bored, the third Kazekage would probably be back, and then she'd check out the battlefield, but she'd need to hurry, before her prey scattered. with a whoosh, Yitsang sped up, flying through the trees like an arrow. Soon, she spotted her targets. In the distance, a group of 8, 2 teams, 1 special Jonin and a Chunin, plus 6 Genin, were running for their lives. The special Jonin was a woman with spiky hair and a ninja hound by her side. Inuzuka clan. Yitsang mused. The Inuzuka were known for their ninja dogs, with their sharp senses, excellent for detection. If she wanted to have some fun, she'd have to be careful. Using her stealth, Yitsang tracked the group, waiting for the right moment to strike. She'd wiped out a dozen Konoha patrols with a silent approach and a well-placed fire blast, but she'd underestimated the Inuzuka noses, especially those of the ninja dogs. Kuramaru, running beside Inuzuka Claw, suddenly tensed, opened his mouth to speak, then thought better of it. He glanced at Inuzuka Claw and barked a few times. Inuzuka Claw's expression changed, glancing at Kuramaru in alarm. Inuzuka Claw, fluent in dog language, heard, "Someone's behind us, Kage level." After a confirming glance, Inuzuka Claw nodded slightly, kept running, and subtly signaled with his right hand. Strong enemy, can't win, speed up. He didn't know who was back there, but Inuzuka Claw trusted Kuramaru's assessment. The 7 behind him understood the gesture, their faces tightening. They obeyed without question, keeping pace and accelerating. Inuzuka Claw just hoped they'd run into another evacuating Konoha team soon. He was unaware that his team was the last, everyone else was gone. Discovered? Yitsang murmured, touching her chin. The sudden burst of speed hadn't escaped her notice. She'd underestimated the Inuzuka's hounds. Yitsang shook her head and chuckled. If that's the case, then no more hiding. Burning escape chakra crackled in her palm. In moments, she'd formed a massive, upward spiraling fireball. Yitsang looked at her creation and smiled. Here we go. Leaping above the Konoha ninjas, Yitsang raised the fireball high above her head and hurled it down at the fleeing figures. Run. Sensing the terrifying chakra, filled with murderous intent, bearing down on them, Kuramaru knew they were busted. No point in subtlety now. He yelled. Boom. Before Kuramaru could finish, the fireball slammed into the team. A deafening roar shook the air as fire exploded, and smoke filled the sky. Umino Iruka, retreating in the distance, heard the explosion and saw the flames. Having received confirmation from headquarters, Umino's squad sprinted toward the camp, not looking back, grateful they weren't far away. Thank goodness for my foresight, that they hadn't gone far when they heard a rumble behind them. They turned to see the outposts along the border exploding one after another. The sand ninjas were here. Umino Iruka's hunch had been right. Umino Iruka's face fell. He ordered them to speed up. The 3 agreed, and the squad kicked it into high gear. Umino Iruka and Komatetsu channeled lightning chakra through their muscles for extra speed. Kakugi followed Konfang's lead, attaching wind chakra to the soles of his feet. This was no joke. The Suna army was launching a full-scale assault. Who knew how many there were? Umino's squad wasn't nearly as powerful as the 3rd Reikage, who could take on thousands single-handedly. Against a tidal wave of enemies, Umino's small squad wouldn't even be a pebble. They'd be crushed. Their only hope was to retreat to the main camp and join the main force. Then the loud noise and billowing smoke reached them. Stop gawking and move it. Kazuoki and the others were frozen, staring at the chaos behind them. Umino Iruka snapped them out of it. That fight has nothing to do with us. Umino warned sternly. Understanding the situation, Kakugi and the others fell in line, sprinting after Umino Iruka towards the camp. Unaware of Higura and Raza's exchange, Umino Iruka assumed the retreating ninjas had run into the Suna vanguard. They couldn't believe the sand ninjas were advancing so quickly. The squad sped up, horror and adrenaline fueling their flight. No one suggested going back. Everyone knew that even if they defeated the vanguard, the main force would be right behind them. Umino's squad would be wiped out, and they'd be trapped too. All they could do was hope for the best for those unfortunate enough to be caught by the Suna ninjas. It was brutal, but that was the reality of war.